Last time, on my boyfriend's boyfriend and me. Phuket, a quiet villa. Michael glowing in that small, private way that had started in Jomtien and followed us south. And me, finally, for the first time, planning something for myself. A cooking class, a driver, a Saturday that belonged entirely to me. Which was the moment Michael told me Nick was coming down to stay. I set one boundary, got him a hotel, sent him off that evening with everything he needed. And then, he was simply gone. At 10:10, Nick posted, 20 seconds. Anxiety by Dochi humming underneath it. And I understood exactly what this weekend was. A chapter Michael would carry with him. And I was standing at the event horizon, present and entirely outside, all at once. Welcome to Act 5, the space between timelines. It's 8:20 in the morning. Phuket is just waking up. I drifted awake long before that, not sure for how long. I had been lying in the quiet of the villa, in that specific stillness that only exists in the hour before the heat builds and the cicadas start competing with each other. The kind of morning that doesn't ask anything of you yet, except to hold steady. I was being careful, moving slowly, staying close to the edge of the mattress, the unconscious choreography of not disturbing anyone sleeping. Except there was no one to disturb. His twin bed, untouched, not slept in, just flat and neutral, the way a room looks when it's been returned to default. I noticed it the way you notice something that should have registered sooner. The body doesn't update as fast as the facts. I lay there and thought about breakfast. What he'd want. Whether there was enough of the good bread left. Maybe some scrambled eggs. What to lay out for him to wear. He never picks well on his own in the heat. The thoughts arrived fully formed, complete, before I even caught them. Tasks assembled for a person who wasn't there. An entire morning routine running quietly in my head with no one to perform it for. 20 years of that. 20 years of mornings shaped around another person. Their sounds, their rhythms, the particular weight of someone else existing in the same space. The small adjustments you don't know you're making until the thing they're built around isn't there anymore. Before Michael, I'm not sure I've ever said this properly out loud. I had never felt more alone in my life. A breakup that had taken everything and given nothing back. A guy who never paid a bill, never looked after me, never thought about me once unless I was standing directly in front of him. Uni over for the summer, everyone dispersed, back to wherever their lives were pulling them. My flatmate and his boyfriend packing up the flat. I was working full-time and studying full-time, and somewhere in all that motion, every connection I'd had quietly dissolved, and no new ones had space to form to replace them. I just was alone. In the specific way you can be alone when you're 21 and the world is busy happening to everyone else, and you are somehow not in the path of any of it. That's what 20 years of morning choreography is actually built on. Not habit, not convenience. That. The man who came and filled that void. He was gone, and somehow that void was back. And then the other thing sitting with me this morning. We'd always had that slightly open door. 10 years of that, maybe. A known thing, a quiet thing, a dance floor kiss, an evening elsewhere when someone was already away, the occasional orbit that went briefly elsewhere. It had its shape. We both understood that shape. And in all of that time, even when there had been something more than a dance floor, when there had been another address, another dinner table, a situation that ran longer and deeper than anything before or since, he had always physically come home. That was the thing that held. Whatever else was happening, the door had never meant this, had never meant an empty side of the bed. There have been other mornings waking up alone, but never because one of us had chosen to wake with someone different. That arrangement had faded out somewhere in the last decade. Quietly, without ceremony. Just stopped being something either of us reached for. I hadn't thought about it in years. I hadn't thought to. And now I was lying here, realizing that a door I'd assumed had simply drifted shut, through habit, through time, through the sheer weight of a shared life pressing up against it, had been open the whole time. I just hadn't felt the draft until now. I'd been calling it generosity. From the first night in Jomtien, I'd worn it like something to be proud of. And I had meant it then. I was almost certain I had meant it. Under the neon, with a beer in my hand, watching him light up from the inside. That version still felt true, innocent. But generosity looks different at 8 in the morning in an empty room. In the quiet. In the alone. I started to wonder, what would that open door look like going forward? And then, briefly, where does generosity end and self-abandonment start? A line I'd never noticed before, and now it looked blurred. It felt like a habit so old I'd stopped being able to see it. The kind that gets so deep into you it stops asking permission. The kind you mistake for character, because you've never once tried to put it down. I got up. Not gently, not gradually, just up. Feet on the tiles, moving. Shower. Clothes. Sunscreen. Because I always forget and always regret it. The small, reliable machinery of a morning, running itself. Don't think, just move. I hadn't protested Nick coming to Phuket, partly because of the boundary I'd set, partly because I'd done the quiet arithmetic of it. There was a group of us. I wouldn't be alone. Michael could have his weekend, and I would have mine, running parallel, with people around me. That calculation had not survived contact with the previous evening. Our companions had gone out for drinks after Michael left. They hadn't invited me. Something had been said, something lost in the space between languages, though their English was sharper than mine, and I'm the native speaker. The message, whatever its exact shape, had landed clearly enough. We're heading out. Enjoy the bed you've made. And so I had. I'd fallen asleep in the twin bed watching videos on my phone. The way you do when your body's tired but your brain hasn't received the message. The villa around me quiet. The other rooms empty. Every direction I'd assumed would hold someone had simply not. Michael gone. Companions gone. My own assumptions dissolving so quietly I'd barely noticed until there was nothing left of them. The particular sting of it wasn't what I'd expected. Not Nick. Not the empty side of the bed. It was the judgment. The companions, who'd watched the whole thing unfold from the beginning and understood none of it, had decided what kind of story this was and written me into it accordingly. Whether they'd meant the deliberateness of it or not, it had felt deliberate. It had felt purposeful. I was more alone than I'd let myself calculate. More alone than I'd allowed myself to mind. Still. It was 8:20 now. The night was over and the sun was up. Phuket was still half asleep. That brief window before the heat rises and turns everything heavy. And I had a Saturday. A real one. A cooking class in Kata, a driver on his way, a plan with a shape and a start time that belonged entirely to me. We pulled up at the apartment complex at 8:30 sharp. They were late. Of course they were. We swung the van around to face the road. Quick getaway position. My cooking class in Kata started at 9:30, an hour away. I called him. "Coming," he said. The kind of coming that means I haven't moved yet. The voice had the rush in it, but not the breath to back it up. Then they turned the corner. Hand in hand. It was the first time I'd seen them side by side in proper daylight. The unforgiving kind. No low lighting. No bar noise to soften anything. Nick was smaller than I'd imagined. Petite, compact. But the way he walked, loose, easy, cocooned into Michael, made him feel even smaller than his frame suggested. He was already tucked in before they reached the van, arms brushing, hips aligned, the casual intimacy of people who'd slept beside each other. Not performative, not for my benefit, just natural. Their ease contrasted against mine in the starkest way. I made a little running gesture. "Move it, folks, I'm late." The playful, light script. The one I know by heart. I climbed into the third row, the back of the bus. They took the second. Michael by the window. Nick folded into him as if he'd always been there. "Go, go, go," I told the driver. My fidget toy was already getting a workout in my pocket. Click, click, click. Michael turned slightly. "It's okay. Are you okay?" Tender, kinder than usual. His whole body softer than usual. Michael isn't someone who notices discomfort in others unless it's pointed out. The fact that he asked, unprompted, meant something. He thought I was anxious about them. I was anxious about being late, about keeping people waiting. Who am I to keep the world waiting? But the way he asked was so soft. I didn't correct him. I enjoyed his concern. Then, Nick giggled at something. He was still largely unknown to me. No shared history, no mutual friends, no context to place him in. Just a young man from 1,000 miles away who couldn't be filed or figured out. And something about that blankness made him easier to look at than he should have been. An open page. Whatever I needed him to be, he could be. Because I didn't know enough to contradict myself. And he spoke. I'd heard his voice once before, briefly, in a loud bar, with too much beer in me. It had faded, become part of the idea of him. This was different. You never really know someone until you hear their voice properly for the first time. It's the last thing the imagination fills in. His voice was higher than I expected, raspier. His English careful, deliberate, almost staccato. And suddenly, he wasn't an idea anymore. Not a symbol, not a threat. Just a young man from a very different life. Different references, different maps. Our worlds drawn in different ink. And with that, relief. The veil dissolved. This wasn't a forever story. Not unless it was a completely different life for Michael. And the completely different life for Nick. He became real. And real people are so much less intimidating than the ones we construct. Still, their physicality didn't change. Nick leaned into him, kissing his cheek. Their hands stayed linked, Nick's palm resting easily on Michael's thigh. Michael didn't flinch, didn't create space. His whole body had softened into this. And I realized I had missed seeing this man. Not jealousy. An ache. A grief for the uncomplicated closeness we'd lost along the way. Lost to shared work, to logistics, to the slow, tangled weight of 2 decades of adult life built together. He had something with Nick. Something we used to have. And yet, it felt warm. There he is, the man I love. Just with someone else. For a moment, I wanted to inhabit Nick. Not the triangle, not the 3-body awkwardness. I just wanted that version of him, all to myself. Nick intrigued me. A bratty energy, a smile and a bite. I knew that energy. I'd felt it before. I'd first felt it across a coffee shop counter. Michael came to the till, handsome, completely unbothered, ordered an orange juice, heard the price and said flatly, "Am I paying for the fucking glass too?" One of my team was standing right there, watching. I didn't feel confident. I never felt confident then. But I had a role to play, and I played it. "Speak to me or any of my team that way again," I said, "and you can just leave." He paid. He left to sit down. And he stayed on my mind for weeks. Not because of the jab, because of the grin that came with it. Cheeky, unbothered. The kind of person who takes up exactly the amount of space they want and doesn't check whether that's convenient for anyone. A few weeks later, a message arrived on Gaydar, long before Grindr, long before smartphones. It was Michael. "Hi. Then, what are you at tonight?" It was Pride. He wasn't local. He'd come 2 hours to be there. I have never got dressed so quickly or so deliberately in my life. I got a taxi to the bar, walked in, moved through into the back club room, the noise and the dark and the crowd, and I stopped. And I watched him, just for a moment, before I crossed the room. The last time I felt this frequency pull at me, I ran straight toward it. And here Michael was, running straight towards it now, with Nick. Nick was free in a way I wasn't. He'd grabbed a backpack and flown 1,000 miles for a weekend with a man he'd just met. A man who was with someone else. I would have had a million questions, but he didn't seem to need any answers. He was so open to the wildness of it all. And here I was, panicking about being 6 minutes late to a cooking class. I felt it then. The box I had built around myself. Safety had become planning. Containment had become control. Not just of space, of time, of story. And here's the truth. I didn't have to be in that van. I told myself it was practical. To give Michael an out. To smooth the logistics. To understand the unseen. All true. But I could have as easily got my own taxi. I just didn't want to be out of the picture. If I wasn't in the van, I wasn't in the morning. If I wasn't in the morning, I wasn't in the story. We pulled up at the market. I jumped out before the van had fully stopped. "Bye, have a lovely day. First stop's a lookout. The driver has all the details." A quick kiss on Michael's cheek, I think. I was already running. And off they went, I thought, to enjoy the day I'd so carefully put together. Every stop considered, every detail arranged. Not for me, for them. Something small shifted in me as I ran. Not bitterness exactly, just the first quiet recognition that I'd been organizing other people's happiness again. And that maybe, just once, I could have organized my own. Would Nick even realize that his whole day had been carefully curated by me? For me? I pushed it away and ran. Heart racing, from the sprint and from something else I didn't have time to name. The market was small, maybe 60 meters square. Concrete floors worn smooth by decades of feet. A dark tin roof trapping all the sound inside. Stalls packed tight. Unrecognizable whirlwinds of smells. Sweet, sharp, fermented, putrid, floral, rotting, fresh. All of it at once. Our group of 18 was just 5. 13 had come down with food poisoning the night before. I noted this with mild alarm, given we were about to spend the morning handling, cooking, and eating local food. This didn't bode well. We walked the stalls. It was extraordinary, authentic, truly local. The kind of market that hasn't been softened for tourists. I was surrounded by noise and strangers and nobody who knew my name. The kind of alone that has nothing to do with the number of people around you. The guide handed us Thai ginger first, explaining how it differs from what we know. Then Thai basil. "Rub it. Breathe it in," he said. I crushed it between my fingers. lifted it to my nose. I inhaled and lifted my head, and I saw them. 25 meters away. 10 crowded stalls between us. At a food vendor, Michael's arm around Nick's waist, Nick pointing at something in a glass case, Michael recoiling in mock horror. They hadn't moved on. They'd decided to stop at the market. The goodbye I'd run into the market from should have been complete, but it wasn't. They were right here. They were laughing. It wasn't secret. It wasn't hidden. But it was theirs. Quiet. Contained. A private moment sitting inside all the noise and chaos. And I had just fallen into it, without permission. The basil stayed in my lungs, like it held the breath, locked the moment in place. And something shifted. It wasn't dissociation. It was expansion. Like a flotation tank, full and empty all at once. The world sharpened and softened at the same time. I could feel the basil between my fingers, hear the vendors calling. I could feel Michael's hand resting at Nick's hip. And somehow, I was also above it all, watching the whole thing from overhead. Myself holding herbs, seeing myself the way I'd looked at Nick in the van, like a stranger, like someone I couldn't quite place but recognized the frequency of. Them at breakfast. The tin roof spinning slowly, like a carousel. One fraction of a second that held an entire lifetime. Full. Empty. Peaceful. Standing in that market, I was somewhere else entirely as well. Back on a dance floor, the night we met. Chaos and noise, just like this. And there he was across it, Michael, exactly as he was then. The same man I spotted through all that disorder and somehow knew. But I wasn't remembering it. I was watching it. 25 meters. A loud, dark room. Michael in the corner, confident, bright, already moving, on his own, not waiting for anything, just fully there. We danced all night. Michael threw me in the air, actually lifted me, spun me, until the bouncers came over and told us to calm down. After, we drove for hours, just the two of us, chasing cars on repeat, talking and then not talking, just sitting in the silence of it. And the world had melted away. There was only him. I had walked across that room the most alone I had ever been in my life. And I had never felt so safe as when I got there. And I recognized myself now, standing in the market with Michael, lighter, looser, the same free version of myself from then, willing to take a risk and a chance, just with better hair than I ever had. The energy at that stall between them and the energy of that first night were the same thing. I couldn't have told you how, only that they were. Like the reflection in a pool of rippling water, reflecting back the past. The way things make sense in dreams, nonsensical and perfectly logical all at once. Truly one of the most surreal moments I've ever experienced. I'm still not sure I'll ever fully be able to explain it. Then, snap. Back in my body. The guide asking a question, my mouth answering automatically. I don't remember what either were. I lifted my phone, took a photo, sent it. I see you, I wrote. He still probably doesn't know how seen he was in that moment. You've been listening to My Boyfriend's Boyfriend and Me. Act 5. The Space Between Timelines. Next time, I'd planned the perfect day. I just hadn't planned whose hands would be in the frame. Heat. Steam. The thud of a knife through a chopping board. The world going loud and physical and completely present. And then the 2 Saturdays end, and whatever had been holding everything at a careful distance collapses. Join me for Act 6, Escape Velocity.